Athens City Council. It's Monday, May 16th, 2016 at 7 p.m. And our first item of business tonight here during our regular session will be to establish a quorum. We have all but one of our members present, and Jennifer Cochran is not with us tonight. And that leads us to our first item of business, and what we are suggesting is a motion to amend our agenda. And I believe Councilmember Butler has this information for us.
Thank you, President Nisley. I would like to make a motion to amend tonight's agenda to remove Ordinance 7316. This is the plastic bag ordinance, since Member Cochran is not here.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove 7316 as the first reading for the single-use bag ordinance. And I will mention before we vote that I know that some members may be here tonight to speak to that issue. There is an opportunity at the end of our agenda, and it is literally called that, an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. And so by removing this from the ordinance, there will still be an opportunity for you at the end to make a comment. 3 minutes for each person. So we have a motion and a second at this point to amend our agenda by removing that ordinance. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries and the agenda has been amended. Our next item of business is disposition of minutes, and these will be for minutes from the regular session held on May 2nd, 2016. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
A second? A motion and this, do we have a second? Okay. A motion and a second for approval of the minutes of May 2nd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the minutes have been approved. We'll now move to communications. We'll begin with city council members and then move on to elected officials. We are in receipt, City Council is in receipt of an email. I just received this afternoon, and this is from the Deputy Director of Public Affairs from the Ohio Treasurer. And folks may have seen earlier mention in the Athens Messenger that several organizations in the area are moving to the transparency program. And this is a discussion that I believe was held with a previous Mayor Weil. And if I'm understanding, all I'm doing is communicating this tonight, so we're not going to have discussion on it. But just to let you know that I have been given information that the Mayor Patterson has referred this issue to City Council for them to consider, if nothing else, an informational presentation from the Treasurer of the State staff person at some point in the future. So we'll take that up as a possible item later, but I did want to mention that communication. Have other council members communication items that they wish to report on tonight? We have been in, I will comment that we have been in receipt of, I think, 2 emails about the single-use bag ordinance, the proposed, at least the discussion of it at this point, and some of the points for and against. And so we have received 2 emails, so just to let the public know that. We'll move on to communications and reports from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason.
I did receive 1 email and also a phone call about the single-use bags, and I referred both of them to Member Cochran.
Okay. All right. And Mayor Patterson, do you have any reports or communications?
I, too, received an email. It came through the Chamber of Commerce about the single-use bag ordinance, and I've heard from a number of citizens as well on the issue. A couple other items I want to bring up. The Building Doctor seminar is this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. at the Community Center. And there's also the Police Remembrance Ceremony that will be outside the Athens Police Department at 8 p.m. that same evening. All right. over on 11 North College.
Okay,
That's all I have.
all right. And we have our treasurer tonight, Ms. Mary Ann McClure, and she has a report that she has distributed to council members. And if you would like to maybe walk us through just a few of the details, or if there's anything of note for us to be...
It's pretty straightforward,
Attention.
President Nicely. Yeah, it's to let you know the status of our interest earnings for first quarter of 2016, which if you look to your right-hand column, year-to-date totals, $17,099.83, which is it's more than 25% of the projected 54,208. There is already more this year because one of the long-term CDs matured, so we're doing fine, and I'm investigating some additional investment opportunities with one of my advisors. And what's attached are just the first 3 months bank statement reconciliations. If you're interested in looking at them and have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming and presenting the report to us. Okay. And Auditor Hecht, do we have a report from you or committee communications?
No report.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on now for ordinances for third reading. And the first ordinance is Ordinance 5316, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to make application and enter into a project agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
I'm sorry, President Nisley, is that 5416 or 5316 you would like addressed first?
53.
Okay. And that's maybe my notes are different than yours. 5316 is the mower.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. It's disposal and replacement of a tractor mower in the Department of Arts, Parks, and Recreation. Excuse me.
Thank you, President Nisley.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 5316.
Second.
Thank you. This particular ordinance authorizes the city service safety director to spend up to $25,000 from the recreation fund to purchase a new used mower. So this will be slightly used, but it's much better than what we are getting rid of, which has been with the city for a while. So the ordinance also declares the equipment no longer needed for municipal purpose, and that's the Jacobson tractor mower. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion, and I'm sorry, we did have a second?
Correct.
For the approval of Ordinance 5316. All those and are there any additional comments or questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Now we'll move on to Ordinance 5416. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to make application and enter into a project agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley. I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 5416.
Second.
Thank you. This particular ordinance is unique in that it's allowing the mayor to authorize and file application, and if awarded, we would then work towards the creation of a handicap-accessible trail at the Dowler property. It's a unique proposal and opportunity for us to enhance our park systems.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Katsas.
So the only reason we're declaring an emergency is we just have to hit a deadline for the grant? Is that the... Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 5416. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 5516 is an ordinance authorizing disposal and replacement of a van for Athens County Municipal Court, and this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance states there's two parts, disposal and replacement of the van. The municipal court judge is hereby authorized to dispose of said vehicle by donation to other government agencies or nonprofit, sale bids or salvage value, whatever he deems most appropriate. The replacement of the van, the court has asked for an appropriation of $50,000 to purchase the van. We don't know yet what type of van is going to be chosen. I talked with His Honor, and he's expressed the desire. He's going to do the best he can to buy local. A purchase of this size, I think, would be nice to keep that kind of money within the community, rather than going to Columbus or Cleveland or someplace like that. So whatever is appropriate within certain bounds, we'll do the best he can. So I make a motion that we adopt 5516.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 5516. Are there any other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ordinance is approved. We'll now move on to ordinances for second reading, and when we do the second reading on these, we often just read the title unless in a particular instance the ordinance may need to be suspended for particular deadlines or application deadlines. So we will have one of these in the list of second readings where we will suspend. Otherwise, you'll hear me reading a list of a lot of different ordinances, so you'll get to hear the titles on them. The ordinances for second reading. 5616 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 39, Wellhead Protection Plan, Sections 39.01.02, Definitions, 39.01.07, Management of Specific Potential Pollution Sources in the Wellhead Protection Area and Buffer Zone, and 39.01.08, Enforcement of the Wellhead Protection Plan. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall. Ordinance 5716 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 5816 is an ordinance authorizing disposal of 2001 Ford Expedition by the Athens Fire Department and is introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 5916 is an ordinance authorizing 2016 street paving and repairs. This is project number 304 and is introduced by Councilmember Pappy. Ordinance 6016 is an ordinance authorizing participation in the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program, introduced by Councilmember Pappy. And I do need an update on this because we thought we had instructions to suspend on this. Is that true or not? Or we don't need it?
We can go to the 23rd on this, but this does need to be amended.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Be sure we'll have six people present.
So we will need to have 6 people present on the 23rd then, and to the best of our knowledge, we will. Okay.
So I move to amend Ordinance 6016.
Second.
And the reason for this amendment, we've already had the first reading, but we understood the Ohio Department of Transportation reviewed the first writing that we had, and it did not match their language. So we've come back and we've amended quite a bit of this, and it should be in your drive if you want to look. But I can, it's technical details related to being a participant in the cooperative purchasing program. As you all recall, that has to do with our salt for our roads. Like I said, there is a lot of additional information here. I guess I could read the add-ons, but if you all are okay with that.
This is adding language recommended by the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Exactly.
And just so it conforms with their regulations.
Absolutely.
I don't know that we need to have all of it read in.
It's technical. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
The intent is the same.
Right. So I think if anybody requests it, we do have available for written record then. Rather than
one thing I can mention, it's Ohio Revised Code 5513.01B is where it's coming from in terms of the revision.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to amend so that our language in our ordinance reflects the language and appropriate references to Ohio Revised Code. And do we have a second on that? Yes. A motion to amend, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. So we will work towards suspending.
I would say if we have enough people to move forward tonight, I would move to suspend.
Because we do have a deadline for this, a grant
We do.
application deadline.
We do.
I'm comfortable with that.
So I move to suspend 6016.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules because there is a grant application deadline for these funds. All those in favor of the suspension signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
I move to adopt 6016 for all of the reasons we just discussed. Mayor?
Just to interject real quick, the Ohio Department of Transportation deadline is May 27th. So.
Okay. So this probably makes it a little bit more comfortable. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 6016. All those are there any additional comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 6116 is an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street between Washington and Carpenter on Saturday, June 25th from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016, for Boogie on the Bricks, a family music and arts festival. And this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy. Ordinance 6216, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Section 13.04.10, unnecessary noise in the downtown area on Saturday, June 25th, and until 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016, for Boogie on the Bricks, a family music and arts festival, introduced by Councilmember Pappy. And then this is the last one for Boogie on the Bricks. This is Ordinance 6316, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code, Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting, to allow vending in a designated area on Saturday, June 25th, and until 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016, during the Boogie on the Bricks Family Music and Arts Festival, introduced by Councilmember Pappy. We now have ordinances for first reading, and so there will be probably some discussion and background information on these tonight. Ordinance 6416 is an ordinance authorizing funds for the purchase of fire extinguishers through a Walmart community grant, and this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley. We discussed this in committee last week. The Mayor acknowledged that we are the recipient of a $1,500 community grant from Walmart, and it's been determined that this money will be used to purchase fire extinguishers. I don't believe that it's been determined where they will go. Is that correct? But we'll be spending this money on that.
No, they will go out to citizens in the city of Athens, is the intent of this. Those who don't have fire extinguishers or may not be able to afford them. So they're a good program that Chief Reimer has sought out and got funding for.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Ordinance 6516 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a lease agreement for solar-powered recycling refuse compacting containers in the uptown area. And this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you again, President Nisley. We've talked about this a couple times in committee. We had a presentation from an organization that was peddling their product, which is an exciting product. And this, I was reminded, is a lease agreement. We're not purchasing these, but we will be leasing them. And these are both garbage and recycling containers that will help dot our Court Street presence. At the moment, we've been informed by the Mayor's office, which many of us as citizens know, that we do not have a recycling presence on Court Street. So this is an improvement. And we're spending up to, authorizing the Safety Director to spend up to $50,000 from the garbage fund, which we've been informed is healthy. Thank you.
Okay, so this is for ordinance 6516. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to ordinance 6616. And before we do, third time's a charm. I've heard the ringtone and somebody's cell phone. So could everybody just take a moment, and I will include
I wanna check
myself. And please just double check your cell phones and make sure they're on mute, because it's just really distracting when we're trying to do business here. So I appreciate the measure. Okay. Ready to proceed. Thank you.
Wasn't me.
It's a comedy of errors tonight with the phones. Keeps us hooked up sometimes when we don't need to be or don't want to be. Ordinance 6616 is an ordinance authorizing disposal of handheld meter readers used by the Engineering and Public Works Department, Water and Sewer Divisions, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley. I believe, if I understand correctly, that this ordinance, because of the emergency clause and that we've already moved forward with the purchase of the newer meters, that this needs to be suspended this evening. Am I correct?
It does.
Okay.
It does, and largely being suspended because there is trade-in value with the current handhelds, and so for us to be able to garner that trade-in value, which is significant, we need to suspend.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Motion and a second to suspend for the reasons given by the mayor, that we can garner some trade-in value on the older meters then. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley, and thank you, Mayor, for offering that explanation. I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 6616.
Second.
Thank you. And again, as the mayor acknowledged, we're trading in some older equipment, which will then get trade-in value for the purchase of the newer equipment, which we've already attained. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for adoption of ordinance 6616. Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll take the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been adopted. We'll now move on to ordinance 6716, an ordinance amending ordinance 12115, authorizing staffing levels and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe the administration wants to suspend the rules on this because of a deadline, or?
You're referring to 6716?
Yes. 6716.
With no emergency clause, we have to adopt it no later than June 30th? No, excuse me, May 30th?
May 30th.
So we have time, Auditor.
Yes, Auditor Heck.
Yeah, please clear up the mystery.
Please.
Well, I just want to clarify that this is just the part of our current staffing ordinance where we're changing the mix of how we're paying people who work in different departments. This is not based on the new compensation plan that will take effect July 1st. Part of the reason, I'm not going to say it has to be suspended tonight, but I would like it in place before we adopt the compensation plan, so that when the staffing levels are listed in there again, we have them all the same. And we had also asked about making this effective January of this year. And so it's really two different operations, so it would be helpful to have this passed at a different time. So it could go to second reading or tonight, but
Okay.
It's just a few changes, and it's just really changing the mix for people that work in EPW and recreation/community center.
Yeah.
So Auditor Heck, I'm looking at the spreadsheet now that's been shared with us. So it looks like it has to do more with the amount of time, whether it's a half-time,
Yes.
or a full-time FTE or
Yeah,
part-time?
sometimes it's hard to determine if you work, say you work in the community center,
Right,
but
but there's
you
a
do
0.35
scheduling for recreation
0.70.
programs. Those are two different pots of money, and so we split that employee and pay them out of both pots. EPW is water, sewer, garbage,
Right.
water, sewer, streets.
Right.
And so, yes, after some, this was requested by the engineer, duties change over time and how much time you spend on one service we provide as opposed to another. So this makes it more equal, which is probably more accurate.
Thank you. Administration? I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for suspending the rules on Ordinance 6716 based on the information provided by the auditor that would be helpful to have this passed for the staffing levels and the allocation of their time amongst the different departments within the city. All those in favor of suspending the rules on Ordinance 6716 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Reisner.
I hereby make a motion that we adopt 6716
Second.
for the reasons stated by the auditor and as described in the ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 6716. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 6816 is an ordinance to provide for an increase in the general city income tax of 0.20% per annum beginning January 1, 2017, authorizing the question of the increase to be placed on the ballot at the next general election to be held on November 8, 2016. And this is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. I really have nothing more to add to it. We all have a copy of the proposed ballot initiative before us. We can read it, discuss it. I just want to emphasize that City Council is not going to hold a vote to increase income taxes. We are holding a vote later, hopefully, to put this before the citizens of Athens to decide what they would like to do.
Okay. Do we have any additional comments or questions amongst council members?
No.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Yes, Mr. Alasef. Do you want to come up to the podium and identify yourself, and then you can ask the question?
Abe Alasef, 1 Westfield Place. I know, as most of you are probably aware, that the local paper did an article on this, and I know you guys can't probably talk to me, but what is your guys' status on that? Because they did bring to light that it seems that there doesn't need to be a need for this increase, and I'm just genuinely wondering, why do we need it? Is the paper wrong? Is the Athens News paper wrong? Was there a miscalculation? What exactly is going on there? Thank you.
I think to summarize some of the discussion, thank you for asking the question, Mr. Alasef, and it is complex. We do have a correction that Mr. Morris made for us about property tax, because we do garner a portion of the county property tax. But I think the article also fairly succinctly stated, too, that we have annexed additional pieces of land into the city, and we provide the city services for that. We also have additional students with an increased enrollment. And we have, I think, as some of the council members have been on for a fair number of years now, watched each year as the annual budget is proposed, knowing that approximately 70 to 80%, between 70 and 80% of our general revenue funds that we budget are for personnel. And so we have held I believe that the administration, under the mayor and the service safety director, and also under the careful, watchful eye of the auditor's office, have done a really good job of monitoring a limited amount of funds. yes, we have seen an increase in income tax, but I think you can also see when we pass our ordinances during the year that once you get through that personnel, we've also had fringe benefits to be able to provide health insurance for our employees. Those costs and pharmacy costs have risen quite a bit. And that also things like running our salt trucks during the winter. We do our best to purchase bulk, but those prices do go up. So I think all of those factors. So it's something that was a recommendation that began with our previous mayor, Weil, and something that we've been under consideration. I don't know that that's takes into account all of the things. It is complicated, and there's going to be more information that the city I'm sure will be providing about this, so that as it goes to the Board of Elections in August and then before the general populace for the general election in November, we'll be able to, we hope, make an intelligent, ask the citizens to make a decision about that and what are the kinds of things we can move forward with as we envision with the future of the community. Yes, Auditor Hecht.
I think the mayor wants to go.
Okay, and Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, Auditor Hecht. I do want to point out a couple points about the article that came out. The article itself was talking about, interestingly, just general funds, not the full revenue that comes in for the city. The full revenue in 2015 was $39,487,057. So there's a big difference here in terms of what comes in for what is our expenses versus what the revenue that comes in is. The revenue was $42,818,098. Something else to point out, though, that I think is critical, and President Nisley just mentioned this is for everyone, is that our medical fund expenses in 2006 was $967,245. In 2014, it was $2,658,000 and change. So there's been a rise in expenses when it comes to medical, as President Nisley mentioned. Another thing, too, is our infrastructure. In the conversation that I just had earlier this afternoon with our city engineer, Andy Stone, is that in 2005, the price per cubic yard to pave our streets was about $94 a cubic yard. Currently, it's up to $193 per cubic yard. So there's been just differences, and that includes the cost of labor to put that down. So costs have gone up, yet he has basically maintained the average $300,000 a year, give or take, in terms of what he spread. So if you take that escalating prices for paving, but the same amount of money, you're spreading it thinner and thinner, and something that we all here, I know council does, I certainly do, is that our infrastructure, it's difficult to keep up. And as Member Nisley was mentioning, salt trucks. You can't just think about the price of salt and the trucks running out there. You have to think about the overtime that's having to be paid, has to be paid, because the only way we can keep this snow off the roads is to have those snow trucks manned 24/7, which is expensive. I mean, we need to keep them clear for emergency vehicles, if not for a type 1 or a level 1 snow emergency, for people to get around as well. So there's a lot to this picture that's a little different than what the article portrayed, that is going in, that there's added expenses. Expenses are going up, and I think the city has done a fine job spreading things thinner and thinner, but things start, we can't cover everything under the current the current funding that's coming in for the city.
Thank you. Yes, Auditor Hecht.
And the mayor covered that very well. We had a discussion this afternoon after I looked at the article and looked at the numbers and realized, I did provide some information to my favorite reporter And it, of course, a good reporter got information from other places. It doesn't always match up with what we have. And it's hard to look at, our bookkeeping is so separated. It's hard to look at it and really understand how it works. But the mayor's pretty well gone over a lot of the figures, the costs that have gone up. I think the only other thing that I would add is that this general fund, general obligation, tax dollars is what we're talking about, that the city can use wherever they want, is the part of our tax revenue that isn't designated for the community center, street rehab, and other things that have been voted on the pool. And so currently that money is divided among 5 different funds, I think. The general fund, the street fund, transportation, recreation, and capital expenses. And that mix of where that money goes is up to council. Hasn't been changed for a few years, although we did add transportation just a few years ago. But that will give, that's where that money will go. And then council can decide, well, we really need more money in our street department, which runs the salt trucks and not only repairs potholes, but they run the salt trucks, et cetera. And so that's where that money will go. And yes, it appears that the low numbers for total revenue aren't really it, and our expenses have gone up. And as you said, medical fund, personnel continue to go up. And so yes, we have increased our revenue. We're paying our bills. But if we want to make any additional improvements, we're very limited on the extra money that we have right now to do that.
Okay. Auditor Heck, just the last few years, our carryover has been...
It was high last year. It was about $2 million.
Okay.
One thing we have to keep in mind is when we're looking at the entire budget is money that is already designated but not spent. We have projects that have been hanging out there for 4 years, like Richland Avenue. And so that money, sometimes we have money in there, so it looks like we have a lot of money, but it's already spoken for, you might say. And
so carryover doesn't necessarily mean it's not spoken for.
Right. Doesn't mean we just have that extra money to spend. And as you know, not only for our non-union, but for all our contract employees, we have added expenses for personnel built in every year, uniforms, other things like that. Price of things go up, and so this is just a way to help us keep up with that.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. And to add to this discussion, I know Councilmember Fall and I have alluded that we're also seeing less support from the state. And is that correct in your understanding as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing we haven't mentioned is that the estate tax that fell off about 4 years ago, we continue to get it's very small, a few $1,000s now, but we, in 2012, we got $259,000+ from that. The next year it was cut in half, and that's just carryover. The states that weren't settled, but were active when the law came off the books, and the local government funds. And so we did have a discussion, the reporter and I, about the local government funds. Some of that comes directly from the state. So the county auditor will say, this is what we gave you, but we did get some directly from the state. So I'm pretty confident the numbers that I gave the mayor are accurate for our actual local government funds received. And one of them dropped off, I don't know, several years ago. We don't get any of it anymore. It was a smaller amount, but yes, we have lost different funding sources.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Patterson.
I just have 2 last comments, and this is to dovetail on what the auditor was mentioning, and the council enacted this, that best practices at the state level is that we do carry a certain amount of carryover from year to year, because we do have bills that run into the next fiscal year, and as opposed to completely wiping out the budget with the anticipation that you're going to be collecting revenue as you go into the next year, which is not the right way to do business. The other thing I want to bring forward and make mention of is that, for the city income tax, for lack of a better way to phrase it, some of it episodically comes in as essentially transient guest tax, not the transient guest tax. I'm talking about things like construction. In 2014, 2015, on Ohio University campus, you saw a lot of construction, but that's one-time construction. Once that's gone, then it goes back down again. So it's what is The city residence tax that's paid in is different than when we have this episodic construction that goes on, or other things going on in the city, to where someone comes in for 21 days plus, and we're collecting the income tax at that point in time. So those things, that's not necessarily reliable income as an income tax as you're looking at things, because you don't know when a project's going to come up or something's going to be built. So just keep those things in mind as well, in terms of any fluctuations that we do see across since 1986 up to this point in time, which is when we've by and large been that 1.65 income tax.
Okay. All right. So the details on the text of the ordinance say that we will submit this ordinance, if passed, then it goes to the Board of Elections at least 90 days before the November 8th election. So this is why the timeline now that we're looking to pass this ordinance before, or have it under consideration for passing before we recess on June 30. Okay. Yes, Mr. Swearingen.
My name is Todd Swearingen. I'm a resident of Athens County, and I think I would be slightly remiss if it wasn't pointed out. And this has only a little bit to do with subject matter, so nobody jump down my back for saying this. The city passed a 1 mil tax, with the income tax being the point source of the revenue, for 20 years to fund the city pool. And March 28th, the chair of the Recreation Advisory Board provided to the city an updated version of what the receipts for that 1 mil tax would be for 20 years, with a newly projected growth of 2% per year for the city, to see realistically where the receipts would be after 20 years. That's 1 mil, and the city is proposing an income tax increase of 2 mils, which would double whatever the March 28th projection was on that particular spreadsheet, which is going from 18 million to 38 million, 37 million. It's, now, presuming the source is correct in today's Athens News, and the city needs 1.3 million to meet all its needs, and I'm not going to quibble about inflation or what the projected needs are or the projects it's needed for, but 1.3 million for 20 years is just using 20 years as a basis. Pick 10, pick whatever you want. 1.3 million for 20 years, let's say, is 26 million. At 2 mil, using the March 28th spreadsheet as the basis, presuming that spreadsheet is correct, would be 37 million. So there are two completely different numbers. One is 26, approximately, million, and one is 38 million, $12 million off. So it would seem to me what would be appropriate is to determine which number is correct in the first place, because 26 million, if that article in the point source is correct, would be a levy of 1.4 mils, not 2 mils. And that should theoretically cover all the city's needs, as is being relayed tonight and in the newspaper. So I would think it would be wise to take a look at the projected costs and the projected receipts and tie them together before 2 mils was actually put into a piece of legislation. Because when that point in time comes in November and the voters take a look at that, the difference between of 0.6 of a mil could be more than enough when the public puts it in millions of dollars perspective to get a lot of voters to say no. And the money may necessarily be needed for the city's operations. So if 0.14 will achieve it, great. Maybe put 1.5 mil in the ordinance and explain to the public what an extra 0.25 mil might be. But to just go for a flat 2 mil and have a 0.6 of a mil difference between the March 28th projections of growth for a 1 mil tax, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse, it would appear to me.
Thank you for the comments, and thank you for the spreadsheet that you submitted. And the auditor has a copy of that now, right? Correct. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, well, thanks for all the comments and questions tonight. And we do have one other question. Okay.
Hi, I'm Eric Lee, lifelong resident of Athens. I don't pretend to understand your budget or your sheets, but just being a normal resident of the city, it's kind of, I don't really understand why you guys are up there crying poor on one hand, but then spending $300,000 on recycling, well, $250,000 for recycling, new recycling containers, and then another $50,000 more for recycling containers uptown. To me, it's I'm not really sure where our priorities are. Are the priorities to save money and get the budget on track, or is it to just continue to spend more money? That's pretty much all I have.
Okay, thank you. Just as a point of clarification, so you're aware of it, and we all learned something a few weeks ago, was that the money for the recycling bins is out of a designated fund. It's out of the garbage and sewer fund, so it can't be used for anything else.
I understand that, but that's still money that came out of taxpayers' pockets, or people that
It
use
did with
recycling with
fees,
trash.
yes. So thank you for the comments. Appreciate you taking the time to come tonight. Okay. All right, and we'll doubtless have more information and questions, but we will move on tonight now that we've had the first reading of the ordinance. We'll now move on to 6916. That's an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency for a community development block grant program for program year 2016. And this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe this ordinance needs a suspension.
It does.
Okay. And that's because there's a June 17 deadline to get this grant submitted. If we miss the deadline, we don't stand a chance. Okay. I move that we suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for suspending the rules so that the city can submit their grant application deadline, or grant application before the deadline on June 17th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Reisner.
I move that we adopt 6916.
Second.
I have a quick question. Do we require a public hearing with this? Yes. So that will be also before June 17th?
Those are already scheduled. This is just the authorization to allow us to enter into the grant. So you'll have opportunity to hear the proposals again, or others may bring forth proposals for that funding.
Okay. And I do believe that you mentioned 3 possible projects last week, but and this does benefit low to moderate income neighborhoods, and so we'll be entertaining listening to other ideas and public input at these public hearings before we make a final decision. And Councilmember Pappy, did you have a question or comment?
That was what I was going to ask, is what those 3 that you had suggested last week. And when are the public hearings, just so, since we're on this topic?
Next Tuesday.
Is the first one.
Okay. So we'll need to get that out publicly to the media, that the public, for the public hearing. That would be helpful. But I believe you mentioned Jeff Hill in West Union, and then also Kimes Reservoir as possible projects.
Those are the 3. There could be others that come forward, but in terms of, I guess, if I were to rank those or prioritize those in discussions with the city engineer, it would be West Union, Jeff Hill, and then the reservoir at Kimes, which was the 3rd.
Okay.
But there could be something that comes forward out of the discussions about this too.
Okay. So more to hear from the public meetings. And yes, Councilmember Pappy, you had another
West
question.
Union. What? West
Sidewalks.
Got it.
The north
Sidewalks where there are none.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, so we have suspended the rules, and we now have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 6916 for our CDBG grant program. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7016 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance, and this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. On deck a lot tonight. No reason to suspend or anything like that. Good. Okay. Let me read section 1 here. $15,000 to general fund lands and buildings, 101, 112 TC 500, $3,000 for city building roof repairs, and $11,000 for HVAC upgrades to serve the front conference room, treasurer's office, IT server room on the first floor of the city building. $18,000 to general fund code 101-351 TC 300 for professional services to cover employee absence. $500 to general fund code 101-351 TC 200 for purchase of a tool set, and $60,000 to garbage fund 760 TC 100 for second solid waste control inspector, and increase the total appropriations by said amount. The section 2, the 2016 appropriation ordinance 01-2015 is further amended by decreasing general fund police 101-207 TC 100 by $22,500 and increasing TC 500 by same amount for purchase of an unmarked crime investigator unit vehicle and new and upgrade of SAM equipment, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. It's been read for the first time.
Okay. Thank you. Ordinance 7116 is an ordinance authorizing a new non-union compensation plan and associated staffing levels, and this is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Of all the business that we're doing tonight, I think this is by far the most important. This piece of legislation began, I believe, back in October last year. We've had, the city has had discussions about making changes to to our non-union employees' compensation plan. In other words, those who are not in bargaining units. The city contracted with a consulting company, Clemens & Nelson, who went through the city's compensation payrolls and so on, looking at our benefits and so on, submitted a report after, I believe, 4 or 5 months of analysis. There's been further meetings, further discussions. The administration, the auditor, and other interested parties have met with the Finance and Personnel Committee to discuss it, and I think we're finally at the point where we can actually go with the plan, have a first reading, and move forward with this. I consider this extremely important. I value our non-union personnel. The city is, I think, is extremely lucky to have the caliber and the people who are dedicated to keeping the city running. When these people leave, they take with them all their skills and knowledge, and the best thing we can do is do everything we can to retain our employees for as long as possible, rather than be the type of organization that brings people in, trains them up, and then they're hired away to another organization or city at a higher rate, better compensation. So that's my introduction. I'll let the administration talk further about this. So if you have questions, ask them. The auditor can also is free to speak after the administration, and then we'll entertain other members.
We, as you've mentioned, this has been going on for quite some time in trying to come to some final agreement on this in terms of the compensation plan. And what we've come to, I think, is probably the most fair and equitable plan at this point in time when it comes to compensation throughout the city with a lot of our employees. I'm going to ask the auditor if you want to make any comments on this.
First of all, I just want to point out that this is the part dealing with the, it's everything, but it has the fringe benefit package language in here. And I think, and we did discuss some of the changes. I think the military leave changes we requested were taken care of. I still think there should be changes under compensation 21E, where it's the city's obligated to pay people who are over the max an amount equal to whatever percentage they give everyone else. I just think it should, whatever council wants to give should be approved by council. And that's not to say they can't give them that amount equal to the lump sum, but there might be sometimes they might not want to, and what if they want to give them more? This is not, they're not getting a percentage, it's not going on to their base pay. And I think if you remember Clemens Nelson, they were very clear that the maximum rate in a pay band is the maximum rate. And if you really want to make money, then more money, then you should apply for another job, try to go somewhere, do something. I'm not saying they don't deserve anything, but I think that council should have a little more leeway in how much they give them. Like I said, it could be a little less, could be more. But I just think, it should just be at a rate, as approved by council rather than equal to any lump sum. Other than that, I think we're okay with the other changes. A lot of our issues are whether we can, calculate and make them happen through our payroll department. So, thanks.
I hear what the auditor's saying, and yes, indeed, you have the right to determine the compensation, and that's why this is before you tonight. I would hate to lose long-term years of service. Someone, and basically what occurs is when they're promoted, that they reach that ceiling, and then they have to commit to the no additional compensation for a number of years. So I would ask that you take, and you can revisit this every year. This is going to take July 1st. As you know, you adopt a compensation and staffing levels every January as well. And right now, it affects one position in the city, a significant position in the city, someone who's shown true leadership, and I would hate to lose that individual. So.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I just briefly want to acknowledge I appreciate the Mayor's Office and the Auditor's Office for working closely on this, as well as the Finance Committee. I know there's been a lot of bugs to work out, and there's a lot of give and take, so I appreciate the dialogue that they were having to make this happen. It's challenging, obviously. These are people's lives, and Member Reisner just acknowledged a few minutes ago that we are lucky to have the workforce we have here. We don't want to lose good people that work hard for our city day in and day out, regardless of the weather, regardless of what's happening. So I appreciate everyone's hard work on this.
Yes. Mayor Patterson.
I want to thank you, Member Butler. I mean, that's key, is that we have the hardest working people who are, a lot of times, it's interesting in our daily lives, as citizens, that a lot of these workers are invisible to us. And that's a good thing on one hand, because that means that things are getting done in the city in terms of it's not a sewer line clog, it's something else going on in the city, water line break, whatever, litter control. So, the reason it's taken so long is because we're working with Clemens and Nelson to come up with something that is fair in terms of individuals, the market value out there, and bringing them up to what is market. This is a document that would certainly be revisited. The language is in there to where at 5 years we would sit there and look at this plan and see where we're at in comparison to the market again. So it's not a static document, it's a dynamic document that we can revisit, in particular within that 3 to 5 year period of time as we move forward. And finally, I want to be on the record as saying I really, really appreciate working with Auditor Hecht in coming to this. It's been hard and difficult. It's not an easy process to go through, but the Auditor's Office and my office has worked very closely together, even up to 4 o'clock this afternoon. As a matter of fact, it was 4:32. But that said, I think that we've come to a good place in this. It is going to cost, but that's because we do need to bring a lot of our employees up to market value for what their work is worth. So.
Okay, yes, Councilmember Pappy.
Mayor, you have been involved in these negotiations, and you sat in our seats a year and a half ago when many of these issues percolated to the surface, or the volcano blew off, however you want to say that.
Right.
So, in that statement that you just made, I'm to understand that you feel comfortable with where the negotiations between the departments and where things stand.
I feel that we've gotten to the best place that we can. It's not, I'm not going to say that this is perfect and that everything is kumbaya. What I'm saying is that we have done the best we can working with Clemens and Nelson, but also the different departments in trying to find the best possible common ground. I think we have. But once again, it's there had to be a lot of working these numbers through and meeting with, again, department heads having to talk to their own personnel, and it's been a long, arduous process. But
well, I would also say that it seems like the city really needed to do that had not been done in quite some time, and so having an outside consultant come in and helping with that process, Auditor Heck, I think that there must have been some value and knowledge gained from all of that, and then they compare us to other cities. So you don't want our employees to be hired off to other cities of similar caliber either. So, okay. Thank you.
There has been a lot to learn. If anything, my head is full.
Auditor Hecht.
I was just going to add a little bit to what Member Pappy was saying, that yes, it's been several years now. However, that's not always been the practice. And our previous HR director was just starting this process when she left, and so now we're a few years down the line, getting this done again. It does need to be done. I think it's what's fair to our citizens. We do not lose people to other entities. The more recent example of someone leaving EPW for the university did not go to the university for more pay for the same position, same job he was doing. He went to the university and is getting more money for a more difficult job and a higher paying job. If he were to get the same position at the city, he would be paid more also. There are very few who leave. That being said, because we have a limited, pool of places to go and work around here. That being said, it doesn't mean we shouldn't do what's right by our employees and pay them what's fair and comparable to other entities and even our local job pool. So,
Let me put a question to you. Is to revisit this every 5 years, that seems kind of long. More like 3 would be more adequate.
3 is really the standard practice, and what we had been doing. As I said, I've been auditor for 12 years. I was on council 2 years before that, and of course, so at being on council, you deal with it when it happens. So that's not been the practice, and I would hope that it would be more like 3 to 5. Putting 3 to 5 in here gives you a little leeway in case it doesn't quite happen. If you lose your HR director to a better paying job in the middle of it, it might take a little bit longer. So that gives you a little bit of leeway. But yeah, 3 years is really what would be standard time frame, in best practices.
Right.
I guess I did anybody have any questions about the cost total? We did like a summary here for everyone.
Yeah, that's the latest figures now.
Yes.
Since 4:32 this afternoon.
Yeah, well, this came through a week after that. But these are the costs for the rest of the year. We have calculated this based on the remaining pays starting July 1st. The general secretaries are marked because they're currently part-time employees. In the new plan, they're full-time, so that would increase that slightly, but then it would also add the medical insurance component onto that. So the top part is the general fund cost, and the bottom half would be the other funds for that total, which is a little bit less than what was in the latest Clemens Nelson. I think they put all positions in there and put them in some of the as full-time that aren't currently full-time. And just so council could be aware, there might need to be some...
About a $40,000 difference.
Yeah. There might need to be some additional appropriations and maybe a few funds, personnel, for jobs, new jobs that were added. You know, some jobs were kind of replaced, a new position, title, but not replacing the old one. But there are some brand-new positions being added.
So we could be looking at that sometime in September,
Right.
October.
A little bit later in the year,
Right.
we'll look at the personnel costs. And so that was part of the reason for putting this together, just so you could be prepared if we needed any additional appropriations. And what the cost came out to be, this is what we have. I don't know. I have some notes down in there, how many pays, and
12 pays
the secretaries I already, talked about. And we did include the vacant positions that Service Safety Director said she was planning to replace most of them, and so we did include those. So this is the cost for, half of this year, which of course then will be additional costs next year. This would be double onto what the current personnel costs are, and plus any kind of raise that you might get.
Right.
So.
We'll have to hash all this out sometime starting October, November.
Yeah. Take
Passage
time in
in.
between, I guess.
Councilmember McGee.
Well, I'm just curious because I'm not sure whether the audience and the viewers understand the figures, and I just wanted to make sure that I understand them as well. And we're talking about, is it a $205,000 a year extra expense for the city? Is that total?
Well, right now, the additional expense for the city for about 6 months, 12 pays, we get 26 pays a year, is $193,000.
Right. Okay. I do have that. My other question is, this would take effect in July, but we're asking the voters to approve an increase in November. So if they do not approve that increase, will we still have the money to satisfy this obligation?
Well, we would, because we would be obligated to do that unless we, laid off people. If we have them on our payroll, we have to pay them. So the cuts would come other places, which is a choice that a lot of entities and businesses make to pay your people. Do you have enough to buy that new vehicle or to, get a new copier and things? But there is a balance there. You keep your people on, you have to be able to give them the tools they need to do their job. So that's where we might be. And yes, this amount, if we'd done it for the whole year, would be double this amount. So that's how much additional would be on the personnel costs beginning next year. And the top half is the $60,000 is general fund only.
Right. Mayor Patterson.
I want to be clear about this, Member McGee, because you raised a good question, and that is that Clemens and Nelson, as this process has been going on, and it's been going on since, help me out somebody, September or August of 2015, has nothing to do with what we were talking about previously with the income tax increase, if that's the question that you're asking. You mentioned November.
Well, yes, my question is, will there be money to pay it if it's not approved? It's a simple question.
There will be, yes. So these aren't conjoined.
Well, as I mentioned before, there are a few funds that will not have extra money to appropriate towards the end of the year.
So the carryover will be less?
It likely will be in the general fund for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for the information. All right, we'll move on to Ordinance 7216, an ordinance amending certain sections of the fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Okay, let me get caught up here. Section 1 reads, effective July 1st, 2016, Section 16, military leave, Section 20, promotion, lateral transfer, and demotion of current employee, and Section 21, compensation are hereby amended as attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. I think the most important thing in all this here we have is that we're increasing the amount of military leave time we're giving those employees who are called up. It seems like about every, I don't know, I'm not going to name a figure, but a lot, because of our current military commitments all over the world. Our military is stretched thin, so we have to call on the reserves and National Guard, and we have people who are committed to that. Currently, we give them 21 days a year to fulfill their duty to the United States. It's becoming more and more apparent that 21 days just simply isn't adequate anymore. So we're increasing it to 30 days. So it's one of those things where, we have really good people and they get called away to go somewhere to do something for the United States. We should be in a position where we say, well, okay, go do your duty. Your job will be here when you get back. And, go for it.
Yes, Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, Member Reisner. I think you summed that up very well. General Bartman at a ceremony that Service Safety Director and I, along with our city engineer, who is a guardsman with the Ohio National Guard, the general summed it up rather well in that in today's climate, it's such a dynamic battlefield, if you will, field of conflict, that our active duty forces that are out there are constantly having to be supported or augmented by our National Guards members as well as our reservists. And then with that, this allows us to make sure that those who are going into harm's way in a multitude of different theaters out there around the world, that they are receiving equitable treatment in comparison to what our collective bargaining units, the way it reads for them, which we have 2 members who are within the collective bargaining units who are reservists as well, or guardsmen, which is 30 days. So this brings our non-union in line with what our union employees get in terms of the leave. And this is important. Again, our National Guardsmen as well as our reservists can be called away at any point in time. It doesn't take much for them to be called on to active duty service and go and serve. So this is important for our citizen soldiers, is what they're referred to as, who go into some places that most of us are fortunate enough not to ever have to go to. And so this is just making things equitable.
All right, Auditor Hecht.
One quick comment, I promise. The reason we have the 21 days is in there is that's what's required by the Ohio Revised Code. So this is, for all the reasons the mayor stated, us giving them additional time and making it fair across the board. We only have a few active duty personnel in the city as it is. Not really a hardship for the city to do this, and it really is the right thing to do. And just bumping it up from the 21 that's required anyway to 30 really is just something we should do. I think everybody agrees with that.
Okay. Thank you for the additional information. All right. We will move on to Ordinance 7316, an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 11, Business Regulations, to add Chapter 11.12, Reduction of Single-Use Bags. And that's the one that we have removed.
Right.
Yes.
Never mind.
Right, we're not reading that.
Okay, we're not reading it. But we will next week. We now have a resolution for first reading. This is R-816, a resolution declaring it necessary to replace existing sidewalks deemed in poor condition as part of the Franklin Avenue Infrastructure Improvements Project number 301 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Papley.
Thank you. We discussed this at a committee meeting, and this is a piece of the legislation that needs to be on the books to go forward with the Franklin Avenue project. So this is the resolution that puts the sidewalk construction, as we all know, sidewalks are responsibility of the homeowner. So this puts this forward to go, and then we've already passed some other legislation related to this, but this moves it forward so that we can do the work needed.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, how much is it going to cost?
So total cost of the sidewalk construction presently estimated at $92,413, and City Council has determined that a portion of such cost, presently estimated at $81,928, shall be assessed against the properties to be benefited by such improvements. The total project estimated cost for Project 301 is $223,237.
Okay. Mayor Patterson. Former Councilmember Patterson. We miss you up here.
I want to say aye. Letters from the Code Enforcement Office are going to be coming out as well that are going to informing those who are affected by this what their options are, but also the costs.
So we've been discussing this now on council for a couple months. On our last project last year, Citizenry asked us to discuss it quite a few times so that it was in the news. And, people knew that it was coming forward so that they could begin to be prepared. And so these letters going from the code office, being written by the code office, are going out ahead of time. So people have more time, and they have a period of time to find an estimate to decide if they want to pay themselves or go along with the city project.
Okay. All right. We'll move on now to announcements and other business. We have on our agenda we have received the April 2016 financial reports from the auditor. So if we could have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the auditor's April 2016 reports. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries. And then for announcements, just so we take care of business for our next meeting on May 23rd, that would be a committee meeting night, but we are also going to have a special session. And that will be on the 23rd. And just prior to our meeting, we will also have a public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant Small Cities program that we mentioned earlier. So thank you, Clerk Walker. She keeps us straight and organized. All right, so we will be potentially having committee meetings next week as well. Are there any committees that need to meet?
Transportation.
Finance and personnel.
I was going to ask the City Service Safety Director if you foresee any need for a committee meeting from safety.
Let me review and I can get back with you this week.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And we will, as promised now, have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. And if our rules are that we have a little timer up here that will time us for the 3 minutes and then give a beep warning. Some of you have been here before and have heard it. So we just ask that you come up to the podium and let us know your name. And also, I think, is there a sign-in sheet up there for tonight? There should be a sign-in sheet, so if you can take a moment so we make sure we have your name written out also. So is there anyone wishing to speak tonight? Mr. Olisek.
Hey, Olisek on Westwood Place. I'd just like to thank Councilman McGee. I know at the last meeting and then today he's actually asking some hard questions about finance, and I appreciate it, as I'm sure many other people do. I know that some other elected officials find that annoying, but we do greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Other persons who might wish to speak? Yes, come on up. And I will tell you, it's an opportunity for you to speak, to make a comment, like Mr. Alisef did, but we don't engage in discussion or answering questions at this point. It's just an opportunity for citizens to make comments. So it's not that we're not interested, but that isn't the way we operate this session of the council. So thank you.
Hi, my name's Caleb Brown. I came last meeting 2 weeks ago and brought an existing ordinance to your attention, and I saw a bunch of you taking notes, so I think you probably should have those notes still, but I haven't seen any evidence of any further discussion about that, so I just wanted to remind you of that. I'm sure you still have your notes, and I just, I don't know, when I was a kid I liked to read those books about strange and unusual laws that nobody cares about anymore, but if I have a chance to maybe not have those laws be in my city, then and not have my city in those books, then I'd kind of like to bring that up again. But there were actually a couple other things I wanted to talk about today. One of them, I was actually surprised to see something pretty similar on your agenda having to do with recycling bins uptown. And really the overarching thing that I would like to speak about right now is being careful with our citizens' money and not just letting people sell you stuff. Because obviously it's on public record now that we've got like over $1 million sitting around in the garbage fund. And so it seems like people came and tried to sell some like new recycling bins, and it seems like maybe we're buying those. And now it seems like people are coming and trying to lease us some solar-powered recycling things for uptown. And first of all, I don't know why you have to have solar power. And second, I don't know why we would be leasing instead of buying when we could simply purchase some recycling bins, install them next to the trash cans uptown, own them, and then just have our recycling people carry them out the same way they do everything else. So I'd like to urge you to maybe consider just purchasing some recycling bins instead of leasing some crazy 21st century solar-powered things for a bunch of money that we don't need to spend. Also, as Mr. Alisef brought up, Mr. McGee has been asking some really good questions. Last week he asked who designated that this like millions of dollars in the garbage fund has to be only on garbage. And he asked if the city council maybe put that in the budget, and if the city council did that, if they could change it. And I didn't really hear anybody answer that question. And I have noticed that, like, we all know the roads need to be fixed. And there maybe, like, I'm hearing numbers in, like, the tens of thousands of dollars range for, like, these projects, and we could maybe do, like, a lot of those with $1 million. And so maybe you could, like, I don't know. I know that there's been all this discussion about that has to stay in garbage, but again, I'd like to ask, who decided that it's only for garbage, and can that be changed? And talking about roads and saving money, I heard, final thing, that the cost like doubled in the past few years from like $90 to like $190 per cubic yard or something for paving the roads. And I would just like to make sure that we're hiring the right people, because I saw some people paving a road in front of my house the other day, and they spent a lot of time not really working, so I don't know what they're being paid for, what the money's going to. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. Do we have other citizens who might want to speak? Yes, the young lady in the front.
Hi, my name is Elena Capel, and I realize that we're not talking about plastic bags currently, but I just want to mention the possibility of allergies and the concerns of people who would actually be responsible for handling the reusable bags in the store. There's a lot of health concerns that come with a lot of things being stored in people's cars and coming from all over the county, and also other counties I know who come to shop here. So please let us know, and I'm just also thankful to Mr. McGee for asking the questions, and just appreciate that, but just wanted to get the word out that anyone seeing this could please notify all your friends and family that this meeting is coming up, and I know it's a concern for a lot of us, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Eric Lee again. I just wanted to point out that as you mentioned before, last meeting, Mayor Patterson pointed out that there was like a few $1 million in the garbage surplus, which is where we're paying for the recycling containers. This meeting tonight, I believe you guys considered allocating $60,000 a year for a new position in the recycling facility or trash facility. I'm just kind of wondering why that can't come out of the couple $1 million surplus. And then also, you had mentioned that staffing is the biggest single cost, but we're tonight talking about spending $500,000 a year on more staffing. So I'm just concerned on the fiscal responsibility. But I would also like to add that for the first time in a long time, I've seen more community involvement. So you guys are doing something right. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the comments. Yes, come on up.
Just to piggyback on, my name's Benja Miller. Just to piggyback on the bag issue, I've never once bought plastic trash bags because I reuse the ones I get in the store for my dog and for our house trash. And I just wanted to let you guys know that we reuse them the way they are. So, that's okay.
Thank you. Any other citizens who'd like to make a comment on an item that's not been on the agenda? Yes, Ms. Goldsberry. Okay.
Not of my nature impatient.
Oh, come on.
Stephanie Goldsberry, longtime resident. I was up there with you all. I commend you. I know how hard that can be and how boring it can be and how tiring it can be. But someone has to do it, and I appreciate you doing it. I did have a question, but I won't ask it. I'll ask it of one of you, and you can maybe answer it later. I was here partly because a lot of people have talked to me about the bags. Number one, they think you're asking too much. I don't know where you came up with 10 cents a bag. I know I have a friend, again, dog removal is an issue because a lot of us, that's what we do with them, and trying to be diligent people to pick up our dog waste at the dog park and when we're taking them for a walk. And that is something that is rather a big issue with me because if anybody saw the time I put signs up that I got a good response. It was on city property. And I did it to re-emphasize the ordinance about picking up waste. And has been very effective, and that's one thing I'd like to see the council do is put more of these kinds of signs up. Because when they're there, people seem to have to remember to do it, although there's a few, and we deal with them, trust me. But on the bags, it just seems very expensive to be 10 cents a bag, and then putting the administration of it onto the businesses. And I know a lot of businesses are not happy to hear that. It's fine. Okay, you want us to pay the 10 cents, but then to turn around and do the administration, that takes a lot of their time, and I would tend to agree with them. I'm not sure where the dog removal bag issue comes. I am sending something to each council member by way of Debbie, which she doesn't know it yet, that I think would also help with some of the issues of the dogs, which is an indirect thing on the whole plastic bag issue. You have to understand that. Signage, receptacles. There's no receptacles for anything to be put in. And people in for it don't pick up. Some people don't pay any attention to the rules. But, that's about what I want to say. And I think the recycling bins are a good idea. They may sound a little big, the ones that you've gotten. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. I'm not. I say I'm all for it. I'm anxious to get mine. And thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please call me.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from citizens tonight? Yes, Mr. Swearingen.
Todd Swearingen from Athens County again. On the back side of the sheet that I handed you earlier, there is a rough calculation, the difference in bag collection, tax collection for a mom and pop, perhaps, and a high volume retail store, the difference between, I don't know, Friendly Paws and Kroger's on an annual basis, and then multiplying it times the 10 cents, and what the proceeds would be. And I understand the reason why the ordinance as it presently reads would not want the business owners to have to remit the collected tax money to the city because there are administration costs. But by and large, it costs the same number of hours to do an inventory for a small mom and pop as it does for a store with fully automated inventory control like a Kroger's or a Walmart. So there's an exponential difference in revenue coming into one versus the other. The mom and pop could put a small display that handle the administrative costs and everything else and break even, maybe make a few dollars, and provide reusable bags for their clients as they walk in, preferably micro or antimicrobial and allergenic, etc., 100% post-consumer waste. But there's a $700 difference on the one side and a $700,000 difference perhaps, or $600, whatever their inventory is per year. And that's a lot of free money to put in their hands, and theoretically they can only use it in a certain fashion. But there are ways to chip away at that and take some of those hundreds of thousands of dollars of those receipts and put them back into that particular retailer's bank general fund. And so I really think that if the ordinance passes, I think it's a good idea. But I think it ought to be divided where maybe 50% goes to the retailers, a sliding scale where the smaller retailers have 100% recovery to put towards in-house use, and then a sliding scale to the new or to the major retailers of 50% and put a cap on it. And then the other 50% comes back to some institution, office, organization that is strictly dedicated towards the reduction of solid waste in whatever fashion achieves that. Because by and large, if I were at Kroger's and I had $700,000 a year to play with the first year, I'd find a way to spend it. Green marketing to make my store look better and blow $300,000, but that doesn't reduce the solid waste in the community, and theoretically that's what the point of this ordinance is to reduce the solid waste. So that's just a small calculation. I'm certain that council will reevaluate this to some degree and make some amendments and some controls, such as what kind of recycled bags can be used. The woman who's got concerned about the allergies, well, maybe there ought to be 100% post-consumer waste, non-reusable bags for a person that's got that concern. But still, it's 100% post-consumer waste compared to 100% virgin fossil fuels. So I think there's some serious considerations that could be thrown in before this gets too far down the pike.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we thank everyone for the questions and comments tonight. And I will entertain a motion for us to adjourn. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We're adjourned at 8:33 p.m. Thank you.